Hi, I'm Father Michael Orsi. I'm your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which brings you the big G, the gospel of Jesus Christ, and little g, all the good things that people do to put that gospel of life into action. Hey, folks, we have a very interesting program today because we're going to deal with some stuff that happens to all of us. We kind of get, well, psychological issues. I say that? Psychological issues. And sometimes we don't exactly know how to treat that psychological issue. And usually, from my experience, it's a combination of a couple of things. It's a psychological issue, but it's also a spiritual issue. And we know that, we are incarnate human beings, we're incarnate body and soul. And we have to treat the whole person, the mind, the brain, the heart, and soul of each individual person. A lot of times we separate them all up, but we just give people a drug and say, okay, this will make you better. I mean, people get anxiety attacks. Oh, take some Prozac, you'll be okay. People get a little bit depressed sometimes. Oh, take some other drug, and that'll make you feel okay. And like this, thousands of drugs out there. Adderall, that'll help you focus better. Folks, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. Now, not that they're bad. Sometimes they're very good if you're taking it with a doctor, guiding you through the whole thing. But they're all Band-Aids. They're Band-Aids, folks. You got to treat the root cause, and you have to get a cure that is going to sustain you without you relying on some kind of a chemical to get you out of the funk that you are in. So we have with us today Dr. Gerry Crete, and he treats souls and hearts. So, Dr. Gerry, welcome aboard.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, could you tell us, how did you get into this, souls and hearts deal? If you go to a psychologist, most of them say to you, well, let's talk about this. And where are you at? But, you're saying, hey, I got something more.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I've been working for years as a marriage and family therapist, as a professional counselor. I've been specialized in treating anxiety disorders and working with people through their trauma experiences in life. But I'm also a Catholic therapist, and a lot of times I work with a lot of Catholics and understanding how rich their spiritual life can be as a resource in the healing process, as well as bringing together psychological, the best of psychological sciences. And I partnered with a good friend of mine, a psychologist in Indiana, Dr. Peter Malinowski, and we wanted to provide something for more people, basically the best of Catholic psychology, and offer courses, blogs, material online. But that evolved, and it evolved into really bringing in some really sound psychological approaches like attachment theory and internal family systems, and making it accessible. And that eventually led to me writing this book, Litanies of the Heart. And so it's just kind of taking a life of its own.
Okay, so do they call you up? Do they Zoom you? Telemedicine? They read a book? How does this work?
Yeah. Well, in my private practice, I will do some telemedicine and in-person treatment and so on. When it comes to souls and hearts, though, we have like online communities where people come together and in small groups and really growing to learn about their interior life, and both the psychological elements as well as the spiritual elements. And we found that those online communities to be really powerful, really life-changing. One of them is called Resilient Catholics, and it's just made a difference in a lot of people's lives. I would say so many programs or so many approaches are kind of coming from the outside in. Like, here are the things you need to do. Like the drugs you were talking about are kind of like coming from the outside in, or, oh, here's this advice, or here's the 10 things you should do to improve your life, or whatever it is. And what we're really trying to do is go from the inside out and really understand the interior life within a person and how can we love ourselves properly in order to love others and God ultimately better than we do now.
Okay, well, that sounds great, but how do you do it? It seems to me, and I think for a lot of people, oh, let me just take the pill and I'll feel better. Okay. But then when you're talking about some kind of a spiritual and internal healing, how do you
Hmm.
get into that with them? What do you tell them to do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we kind of come at it from an approach called parts work. And that the most popular type of therapy related to parts work right now is internal family systems. And the approach there is to understand that within our interior lives, that we have some level of multiplicity. In other words, we have different parts of ourselves within that we need to kind of relate to and understand and work with. And the way I would explain that, because it can be a difficult concept to get right away, would be I don't know. After work today, there's a part of me that wants to like go work out, eat healthy, do my prayers. Like there's a good sort of managerial part of me that wants to do the right thing. That part could take charge. But I may also have another part of me that's kind of, is expressing I'm tired, I'm worn out. I just kind of want to binge watch television, or I just want to eat a bag of chips or something, or play video games. So I could have two different parts of me, for example, within that can be in a conflict with each other. And, even here St. Paul talks about, I do what I do not want to do. Or St. James talks about a war within. And so we realize that we have inner conflicts but how do we resolve those inner conflicts? Well, oftentimes we're not really conscious too much of them. They just sort of one part of us kind of takes over, or another part does, and we're not really fully aware. We just end up doing whatever we do, and sometimes we get into patterns and so on. But our approach is to really try to connect with the deeper self, the sort of spiritual center of the soul. The guy who developed internal family systems called it the self. And as we've explored that, we realized that within the Catholic tradition, we have St. Paul talking about the inmost self. We have a lot of monastics talking about, a true self or cave of the heart or the mirror of the soul. St. Athanasius talks about all this kind of stuff. It really gets to the sort of like more core center, perhaps best reflecting the image of God. And when you access that spiritual center, you can relate to your different parts within you in a whole different way. And so we're kind of bringing together both that Christian tradition of connecting with your innermost self and the psychological approach of working with your internal parts to actually help a person develop a greater sense of inner harmony, and that the parts are kind of working together like a beautiful orchestra, if you will, rather than having parts at war with each other or in conflict with each other, which is what I've come to see as a source of anxiety and stress for a
Okay.
lot of people.
So somebody would get in touch with you
Hmm.
and say, "Gee, doctor, I'm just a psychological mess. I have all kinds of anxiety, and I'm I can't stand myself. I can't stand anybody else. And you're saying that it could be a spiritual remedy, and they buy it.
Well, I would say it's both, right? It's psychological and spiritual. And so if somebody was calling me about wanting to do one-on-one work, then that would be something I would do in my private practice. That would be something like as a counselor working with somebody one-on-one.
Okay, so
Uh,
let's make believe somebody comes into you and says, "I have a lot of anxiety." Okay, then what do you
mhm,
say?
yeah. Well, yeah, I would start off, first of all, I would want to meet with them and get to understand their life story, a little understanding of what's going on in the context of their life now, and kind of understand. And then once we built a rapport, and there was some understanding there of what was going on, then I would help lead them into a place of being able to look inward and to start identifying these different parts within. And once the person is starting to do that and gets a little distance from their own internal parts, and by that I mean can actually connect a little bit with them, then you start to learn that your parts, some of these parts are carrying certain burdens. So remember I was mentioning like this manager type part that just, wants to go work out or wants to eat healthy and wants to do all these things. Well, that's good, right? Like that's positive. But if that part also has the burden within that says you're unlovable or you're not likable if you don't measure up to certain fitness standards, or you don't measure up to, you're not attractive enough, or you're not healthy enough, or something like that, then that part is carrying a burden and then starts to actually behave maybe in an obsessive way or an anxious way with that. So good intention, but now behaving in an anxious way, just like the other part that wants to binge watch TV and just eat a bag of chips, that part of me, or whoever, the part of the person, maybe carrying a burden also that needs to kind of get addressed, that is driving that behavior. Because deep down, having some recreation, having a break, having some downtime is a good, but doing it in a way that's obsessive, doing it in a way that precludes, also the healthy side, that it can be unhealthy, right? And so what we're doing a little bit is getting at what is the burden and the underlying messages, where was that learned in life, and so on, in order to be able to have those burdens relieved. And
Okay.
so that each of our parts are functioning in a positive way. And then so in my example, the self, once you're accessing that core inmost self, is able to say, hey, we do need to do some healthy things. How about if we plan to work out? How about if we, but also then take a nice break? We're not going to binge watch, but maybe we'll do something recreational to downtime afterward. So I'm creating an environment within with greater harmony, less anxiety.
It was interesting. Today, uh, I read the gospel story about Martha and Mary. And,
Mm,
Martha is all ticked off because Mary's not helping her out, doing the household serving tasks when Jesus was visiting with them. And Jesus says to her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious about many things. I guess she had a lot of anxiety. Only one thing is
yeah,
important. And Mary's chosen the better portion. She's listening to me. So let's talk about Martha. Yeah, I mean, I feel a lot of Marthas coming into you.
yeah. Martha is that, I would see Martha as that part of the person that's that manager part. Good intention. You want Martha, like you need Martha, or else nothing would get done, right? But but she's at the exclusion of having any time, maybe in prayer, having any time, downtime, maybe time with Christ. And so Mary is calling, in a sense, Martha, to, or all of us really, to slow down, sit with Christ, pray, be, right? Just be, and be loved, be attended to, be cherished, and that is actually a priority, and before being a doer. So I would say we all have a Martha within us, I bet, and we all have a Mary within us, but maybe the Mary doesn't get a lot of play.
Okay, now, how do you help people to become a little more like Mary? Because a lot of people suffer from poor self image, they suffer from anxiety, they suffer from depression. There's so many things that people are suffering from. And it certainly seems that that gospel passage talks a lot about it. But how do you get people there? You talk about the
Mhm.
Bible with them? Do you recommend scripture passages? You say go to church? What do you do?
Yeah, so all those things are good things. Like I would say, read my book, Litanies of the Heart, because I do actually walk you through that process of how do you kind of connect with your parts and discover that core self. In other words, allow Mary to have space in your life, and not just be a Martha all the time. So you have to do the internal work. And so I would say my book helps you do that. At soulsandhearts.com, we have communities and information on how to do that. Obviously, if you work with a therapist who's trained in this, like internal family systems, they can help you get there. So it really is a process, because it's like you're having to practice living differently and practice loving yourself differently. And so but you have to experience it. You can't just be told to do it. Like I'm kind of telling you to do it to do it now, but one has to actually experience what it is because um, if you have a Martha, if you have a part of you that's a Martha, that might be fine because you need a Martha, but is the Martha being driven with, if I don't complete tasks, I'm worthless? Or if I don't achieve, or if I don't, if I don't take care of everything and everybody else's needs in my life, then nobody's going to want me and I'm unlovable or something like this. So if that is going on, then that's a burden, right? That is making Martha, that is causing Martha, so to speak, to be weighed down and to become anxious, obsessive, and worn down and broken eventually. And so once that part of you is unburdened with that, and you're able to um, experience what it is, I guess, to be a Mary, what experience to slow down and feel that and actually connect and live from that inmost self space, you will feel different. There will be a sense of lightness. There will be a sense of freedom. There'll be a sense in which now the Martha will be operating in a whole new way when it's not driven by the need to be worthy or to prove that you're lovable. Because when you are in the Mary space and you actually sit with Christ, he will answer all that. He will give you your sense of worth.
Action for Life is proud to sponsor A Conversation with Father Orsi. Action for Life is an all-volunteer, pro-life, interfaith ministry that's focused on the sanctity of life from conception to natural death. In addition to sponsoring this TV program, Action for Life provides financial support and life assistance to any woman who wishes to carry her baby to term in anticipation of an adoption. Action for Life also provides financial assistance to a variety of pro-life organizations, including maternity homes, pregnancy resource centers, anti-human trafficking agencies, and sidewalk advocates, but to name a few. Please consider making a donation so that we can continue in the fight to save preborn babies. You can donate online at actionforlife.org. Thank you and God bless.
Hey gang, I know a lot of you sometimes can't watch all of our episodes of Action for Life. However, we have a solution for that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and search for Action for Life Florida. And you can catch up on all the shows, and guess what? Extra added bonus, you get to hear my weekly homily. So, YouTube and you make a fine couple. Right now, Doctor, I've been reading a lot of information regarding there's a very high suicide rate for teenage girls because they're on the internet all the time, and there's like images of the women on the internet that say this is the way a woman should look. And then there are some people on the internet that have different websites which tell girls that, well, you should do this, you should do that, this is good, and they can't live up to it. And they look at themselves and say, well, I don't look like that. I don't act like that. And so these influencers almost convince them that they're not worth anything. And these young women kill themselves. Do you have anything like that come to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. And unfortunately, I see that with boys too, more and more. The same kind of influences to look a certain way and all this kind of thing. So, but it affects girls and more I think predominantly. But here's the thing: I look at the Martha type, which is a doer. Right. She's trying to manage life and do things. So she's trying to be proactive in life. And that's like the example I gave earlier of the part of me that wants to work out and everything is a doer, manager. But another part of me isn't so much preventive, but is reactive. So if I'm overwhelmed with fear or shame or pain of some kind, then another part of me shows up to react against that. And for some, that could take the form of alcohol use or drug use, an escape, right? Or some way of just, I want to escape my bad feelings about myself, whatnot. But for some, and what you were getting at, and especially if it's affecting a young woman, the desire to take one's life is that kind of a part that is a part of the self, a part of that person that is thinking the only way I can escape my feelings of shame, maybe my body's not good enough, or I'm not good enough, or my fear or my pain, whatever. The only way to escape that would be to take my own life. And I would say, oddly enough, that behavior is trying to be protective. It thinks that by ending my life, that I will protect myself from the pain or the shame. And of course, we know that that's dysfunctional, right? That's disturbing. So the way to approach it is to actually understand and connect with the part. You can't just say, "Oh, don't take your life. That's bad. That's wrong." Of course, it is wrong, but that's not how you relate. You relate by saying, "I hear your pain. I feel your pain. I get it. That you're thinking that the only way to stop that pain is to end life. I want to show you a different way." You have to connect with, ideally, with that inmost self that reflects God's image, reflects grace working through that person, to be able to say, let me help you with that pain. Let's address the lies that society has told you about yourself, and let's find out the truth of who you really are in Christ. And let's walk through that. So you have to meet that part of the self where it is, where it's struggling and where it's in pain.
Okay. Now,
Um,
you said that you can do this, or you do this online with a group online, a virtual session.
well, yeah. Well, so some of, like, when you're talking about a serious thing like somebody with suicidal ideation, I would say one-on-one therapy. They should see a licensed therapist, and they should do this kind of work one-on-one primarily. In general, most of us, I would say most of us could benefit from some kind of counseling or therapy for sure. At Souls and Hearts, our programs, like the communities that we have, are for people that, if they were struggling with something as serious as suicidal ideation, we wouldn't necessarily start them with a community. But when you go into communities, basically you're working in a small group, and you're learning about your internal world. You're learning about the parts that your parts. You're learning how to love them and connect with them, and what different kind of parts you have within your system, and how to live from a place of that inmost self that I'm
Well, what
talking
would be
about.
some of the, I know you wrote the book, and folks, you can get the book,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
what are some of the chapters about? How would it be? How would you be breaking it down?
Yeah, yeah. So literally, there's 12 chapters in this book, and I have and the book is addressing particularly post-traumatic stress and anxiety. And almost everybody's experienced anxiety. Everybody's experienced some traumas in their life. Some things more serious, some things less serious. But still, I hope everyone would relate to it. So in this book, in each chapter, there's a little vignette, a little story that's short, but just gives you a little snapshot from someone's life. And then I kind of go over the psychology behind this whole thing of parts. And then I do a little strict scripture study. So you're sort of learning about the psychology, you learn a little bit about what is the Bible saying about it. And then there's, what's really important is there's an experiential activity. And so they're either prayers or meditations. And they're all designed to help you connect with those parts. And they're all designed to help you in a loving and kind and curious and calm way, bring those parts in, help them let go of whatever burdens they're carrying, help them relate to each other better, within, so your own internal world is relating better with each other. One of the ways, one of the elements, and why the book is called Litanies of the Heart, is that I developed these prayers, 3 prayers, these litanies, and I base them on attachment theory, which is a really powerful psychological approach of that we all have these insecure attachment styles, and psychologists, counselors are helping people to develop secure attachment with other people, is kind of the goal of all this. Well, these prayers I designed to create a secure attachment with Jesus. And the whole point of the prayer was to help a person go from insecure attachment to secure attachment. So some people in their insecurity are avoidant, and some people are very anxious, and some people go between being very anxious and being very avoidant. And I divided those three styles into the three litanies. So one of the litanies is the closed heart. And so it's about going from a place of avoidance or a closed heart to a place of secure attachment and connection with Christ. And then one of the litanies is the wounded heart. And that is going from a place of anxiety to a place of security and safety with Christ. And then the third one is the fearful heart. Litany of the fearful heart is going from a place where you're flipping between the two and walking the person through. So those are three examples of the prayer meditations.
Hey, folks, this sounds fantastic. I mean, you can't go wrong if you get attached to Jesus and you let him guide you and, get over the bumps in your life and, realize that there are so many ways that we can be healed and that, the soul and the mind and the body, they all work together. And this is a holistic way of helping us to become more fully alive, more human, more loving, and most of all, to love ourselves in the proper way. Dr. Gerry, I think that your book is going to be a bestseller because a lot of people are in need of what you are offering us. So thank you for being with us. Hey, gang, Dr. Gerry's for action. I'm for action, and I know you are too. We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for Action for Life. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life.